With that, I'll turn it over to Chairman Langworthy. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much, Jessica. And it's already been here. We're Thursday. It's already been a very big week in our party around the state of New York. We had primary and special elections on Tuesday, and it went extraordinarily well for our party. Our endorsed candidates, Nicole Malliotakis, overwhelming victory, well on our way to defeating Max Rose in New York 11, so we can restore Republican representation at the federal level to the 5 boroughs of the city of New York. I think it's our duty as a party to deliver that. Also in New York 22, Claudia Tenney, resounding victory, strong results at the polling place, which is, this is one of the #1 pickup opportunities in America. That's a seat that slipped away from us 2 years ago. And Claudia, who is one of our guests, those both were our guests just last week, faced those primaries, defeated their opponents, and are well on their way with a united ballot ticket to go and carry their message into the fall elections. Also, we have a strong victory in Long Island. Andrew Garbarino, who we'll have on in the weeks to come, running to succeed Pete King in the Congress. And he had Congressman King's full support. He won an overwhelming victory as well. And obviously, a lot of the eyes of the country were on us in New York 27 as the most unprecedented election I've ever seen, where you have a primary and a special election on the same day, running against not 1, not 2, but 3 opponents. Chris Jacobs won an overwhelming victory. He is now Congressman-elect Chris Jacobs. We have done our part to keep the president's wind tact in order, and he dispatched those opponents even without counting the absentee ballots. So that is a great sign of things to come, I think, for the fall. Last week, we had the announcement maybe 10 days ago that Leader Flanagan was stepping down and resigning his seat in the New York State Senate. He had already announced he wasn't seeking re-election. So there was an election for leadership, and we're very proud to have with us today the new leader of the Senate Republican Conference, someone that is going to be our full partner, along with Leader Will Barkley, who has taken the reins of leadership in the New York State Assembly, who we had on a few weeks ago. And we are going to bring a new generation of leadership to this party and regain that past strength that we had in the New York State Senate. I'm very proud to have Rob Ortt here with us today. I've known Rob Ortt since probably, about 2003. We were both members of the Niagara County Young Republicans. And it's kind of funny to see where we're sitting here today. But very long and distinguished career for a young man. Are you the youngest leader in the history of the Republican?
It probably in the Republican Party, just may be. I'm still the youngest member of our conference, so that one I know. So we'd like to change that going forward, but yes.
Absolutely. To tell you a little bit more about Rob Ortt, he answered a lifelong Western New Yorker, answered his nation's call after 9/11 and joined the military. And he spent time in Afghanistan, a decorated Bronze Star recipient. Rob then, upon return, became a member of local government, was the clerk treasurer of the city of North Tonawanda, then went on to serve his city as mayor and did a great job in 2 terms as mayor of his city. And then as there was a changing of the guard in the state Senate, in 2014, he answered the party's call once again in a year where he wasn't expecting to run for anything. There was a shakeup, and Senator Ortt, entered that breach and won overwhelmingly. Has had a very distinguished service record in the state legislature, has fought hard for our values, fought hard to help Republicans across the state, and I believe we'll bring the fighting spirit to restore the greatness of the Senate Republican Conference. Please welcome our new Senate leader, Rob Ortt.
Thank you very much, Chairman. I want to thank you for having me, and certainly it's an honor to be here with you and with the folks who are tuning in and your staff and your team. I know you yourself, you're welcoming a lot of new people. Of course, you yourself, are newer to the mantle of our party leadership, and that should be exciting, I think, to everybody who's tuning in, that we do have a new generation of individuals who are stepping up, because you need that. You need that. Our party in New York State, I think, certainly needed that, and it's certainly great to be able to work with people that I've known for a long time, including Leader Barkley and obviously Chairman Langworthy, because I know that just makes that learning curve of getting to know somebody is kind of shortened, and we can dive right in to the real work at hand. And no question, that's what I, as taking over the Senate, I certainly want to thank my colleagues who ultimately unanimously voted for me as leader last Friday. It was actually my wife's birthday. I don't know if it's a birthday present or not for her, but it was a great honor and very humbling when your colleagues, people who are also senators, who've also been elected by their constituents, elect you to lead our conference, especially at this critical juncture, which I certainly know you're aware of, and I know Leader Barkley is aware of, and we have our work cut out for us. But I'm excited to get to work. I'm excited to carry our message forward into November. We have a great slate of candidates, and we just need to make sure we're getting their message out and bringing, at a time when I think that the difference between our party and what we represent could not be clearer from the Democrats who have moved. I mean, you mentioned the primaries. I think about the results on the Senate side and the Assembly side the other night, where socialists, knocked out what we would call long-term liberals, institutional liberals, not liberal enough by today's New York City AOC standard. And so I think the stakes and the lines have never been clear between our two parties, and that's a good thing for us, because I think where we stand is far more in line with the average New Yorker, and certainly which is better for New York going forward. So I look forward to being part of that on the Senate side and growing our conference in the months and years ahead.
That's tremendous. This will be the first week in a while where we've only had one guest, because it's tough to get it all in and try to keep under an hour. But we should have a good opportunity to get questions from folks that have tuned in today. I like to make this as interactive as possible. So
Sure.
if you have a question or a topic you'd like to discuss, there's the question box if you'd like to type it in. If you want to use the raise your hand function, if you'd like to get on here and talk with us on video, that's an option too. So you do that, and we'll pivot here shortly. But Rob, obviously you come in to this role after the leadership of Senator Flanagan. He elected to stay on in what was a contentious leadership fight after the 2018 elections. I mean, and I guess we kind of lay it all out here on the show typically, but it was a extremely divided time. We got shellacked. I mean, most of the reason I ran for chair is the outcome of 2018. Seeing us go backwards in Congress, but the catastrophic loss of the Senate majority. The taxpayers of the state of New York have been facing the consequences from the moment that happened. And we lost seats that we didn't even know were in competition. I mean, members thought they were A-OK, and then what do you know? A tidal wave came and washed them out to sea. So it's been really difficult, considering everything stayed the same. There was no autopsy, there was no postmortem on what went wrong, other than a hell of a lot more Democrats came out to vote than Republicans, and we got wiped out in a national tidal wave. But it has struck me for a while that we have to retool. We have to change the way we look at these things. And the way politics worked in New York State, for those of you that might not know, the Senate was always the Republican chamber, the Assembly was the Democratic chamber. We were the bluest state to have one chamber of our state house in Republican hands. Now, there were plenty of people, myself included, that criticized that Senate majority because they were go along, get along, whatever it was to stay in power, not necessarily change the dynamic for the people. But I've even admitted I was wrong, because they stopped a lot of really bad things from happening. But now in this era of AOC and progressivism and radicalism on the left, this stuff's all becoming reality. And as I've long said, the largest crisis that we face as New Yorkers is the outmigration of our best and brightest. I think between the pandemic and the unrest, that's going to be put on steroids. You know, you come in here in June of an election year. The candidates are recruited; they're on the ballot. Some of them have been on, you know, this Zoom program in the last few weeks. We have some very bright lights running for office, and most of them were self-identified. They said, "I don't like what I'm seeing. I'm going to step up and run." But where do you see the plan of attack starting as you go and put your own stamp on the Senate Republican conferences?
Sure. Well, a couple of things, you mentioned that I think are important to sort of unpack a little bit too is when I got to Albany I took office in 2015, I was also within the conference, somebody who thought that we were rowing with the tide rather than trying to change it, right? We were sort of, there was a lot of coziness with the governor at times that I thought was dangerous, because to me, it was always apparent that at some point that was going to end and we were going to be left, without a chair. That was always, and so to me, I thought we should be showing a little more, push to try to advance our ideas and our causes. But as it turned out, to your point, there's no question from a defensive standpoint, if you cared about individual liberties, if you cared about the Second Amendment, if you were a small business owner, a farmer, you're in law enforcement, if you care about your taxes and affording to stay here, you have been left defenseless by the fall of the Senate. That really, that was the last bulwark. So while it wasn't offensive, it was almost like a walled city. We couldn't go on the attack, but we could repel, a lot of things. And I know that was hard at the time to understand, but I think people certainly today appreciate that maybe a little bit more, including myself. And I was there, I was in the Senate for 4 years. But I think when you talk about, our plan of attack, look at our plan of, first of all, we have to have a plan. I don't know. We've been running, when you're in the majority, it's different than when you're in the minority, especially in a state like New York. I think people on this call probably understand. Sometimes my constituents maybe don't appreciate. New York's unique because when you talk about the national thought leaders on the Democratic side, they're from two places. They're from California and they're from New York City. And those people then drive. So we are in the belly of the beast. This is not just New York's blue, like Massachusetts or some other. This is the, Chuck Schumer, Jerry Nadler, AOC, Nita Lowey. All these people are from the same place, New York State and New York City. And so it's not an accident that all these things are happening here, because this is where these ideas sort of, bubble up from a lot of times. And people have heard of AOC and all those people I named. There's a ton of new acolytes in the New York State Senate. You may not have heard of them, but trust me, we have like 7 of them that came in with the class of 18, and they would like to have more. And so our first plan of attack is we can no longer run the playbook that we were running from 2000. We can't keep treating the elections like we're running elections, from 2 decades ago. And that's the first thing is we have to recognize the fight we're in, and that it's a different path to get back to where we want to. We're not going to go down the same road whether it's fundraising, because there's a lot of donors that'll give you money because you're in power. When you're not in power, your fundraising model is going to have to shift, right? What's that?
They don't call back as often.
No, they don't call back as often or call at all. Sometimes you have to kind of bug them, but you got to show them you have a, people want to support somebody that has a plan. It's like almost like going to an investor if you're a business. If you don't have a business plan, they might think you're a great person, but they're not going to give you any money. So we have to identify that plan, a plan to victory. Obviously, downstate is critical, the Hudson Valley and Long Island. That's critical for us for 2 reasons. One, we need to make them play defense down there. Otherwise, they're going to start throwing big money in districts upstate or districts that have historically not had big money being spent. And we need to make sure that our candidates have messaging support as well as, institutional and campaign support around them. And I think for a long time, there really was no messaging support. Nobody knew, what did the Republican conference in New York State in the Senate stand for? What were we, other than, if you elect the Democrats, it'll be bad. Well, now we know that. So now what's the message? What's the message to come back? And I think we have to be very, very aggressive. Different issues in different districts. Obviously, different things play on Long Island, maybe than they do in the Hudson Valley, or certainly in our neck of the woods in Western New York. But there are issues that transcend. And because they've moved so far to the left, we should be able to identify those, and we have to be merciless in driving those messages home and put them on the defensive. They have candidates like Senator Skoufis, who his first big vote was the governor's pay raise. And he admittedly, by his own admission, hid in the bathroom. Now, aside from maybe the humor in that, or so you go, this is an elected state senator who's elected to make hard decisions. And in his first one, he was hiding in the potty. And so, that's what we're going to tell all his voters when we're in his district. Because if that's the kind of leaders you want representing you, God bless you. I don't think that's the case. And the president won his district, by the way, in 2016. And so, we're going to go down and have those conversations and put the Democrats on the defensive. And not only for what they've done, but what they've talked about doing. There's been statements on the Senate floor that the NYPD has not kept New Yorkers safe. These are the folks who ran into burning buildings. And that's what I think about when I think of the NYPD. But they, according to Senator Ramos, they haven't kept us safe. They haven't kept New Yorkers safe. So these are things that we have to call out and stand against, and we can't be afraid of it. We can't be afraid of maybe upsetting, somebody. We have to let people know what we stand for clearly, concisely, and bring the fight to the other side, politically speaking, if we expect people to entrust us with leadership.
All good points. And there was always an identity crisis, and there was obviously there. You can't be myopic or pretend like there's not a difference between upstate and downstate. Obviously, you and I live about 10 miles apart or less, but this is a huge state. And I welcome seeing you on the trail as I'm hustling around all these different counties, and you're going to get to see the whole thing. But the most eye-opening thing for me is how the same things I heard in Western New York and Buffalo all these years, I was hearing out of the mouths of people that talked a lot differently than I did. I mean, and the same themes are there. People talking about how taxes are crushing, how they're going to look somewhere else for better opportunity and more affordability down the road, how we don't enjoy the same freedoms, economic and personal, that people in other states do. It's not by accident that we've lost so many people to Florida and Texas and other southern states that have more personal freedom, and it's much less expensive to live. I believe during the bail reform discussions pre-pandemic, the thing that people were saying is, we pay this high of taxes and we can't count on safety and security. And now with the unrest and what's come of it and the lawlessness and the attacks on our law enforcement, you have a continuation of people saying, I'm not safe in my community, because it's the police that are being vilified, even though, I believe the NYPD is the finest police force on the planet. It's the most diverse, it's the most effective, and I will always stand with law enforcement, and I know you're the same way. But that is, we have to find those issues, and this puts one right at the forefront. Law enforcement, safety and security. The Republican Party will always stand with safety and security. Of course there's bad apples in the bunch, and we've got to do everything we can to weed those out, but we have to stand with law and order, because that's something that unites people no matter what political affiliation they might be with. And we have to find those issues that add to our totals, not subtract. I'm scared about having a 6-year-old daughter living in a world where, we've got the media and other, major thought leaders in the country bashing police. I mean, when we were kids, we were taught to, if you're in trouble or you're scared or you're in danger, find a policeman. Now it's the opposite. Tell kids, run away from a cop because they're bad. and that's what's wrong with this. And this is a culture war I'll fight every day. I said, just like you, we're done playing patty cake in this party. And we took the fight to the governor. And now that this pandemic is clearing and we're getting back to where it's not necessarily about public health every single day. His show got canceled, by the way. We're going to go and start calling this out again. I'm looking forward to being in Albany on Monday to actually have a press conference for the first time in 4 months. But we have to delineate those issues. And, with Leader Barkley and yourself in the leadership chair, I think we can all effectively take these messages all over the state. But, as we look at the Senate, talk a little bit about, where we have to grow the party. Obviously, we have a lot of strength upstate. We have a lot of seats upstate, but we have a lot of things that we have to defend because the retirements, so many members on the exits and are heading out. So we have seats that should be safe Republican seats that I think we have good candidates in, but they're up for election with brand new candidates. Why don't you talk a little bit about those seats?
Sure. Yeah, we are losing 9 members, not 9 retirements, right? Out of a conference of 22 at this point. I mean, 22 members, because we have 23, but the one seat is empty, the Senator Antonacci seat in the Syracuse suburbs that Angie Renna is running in. So we actually have 22 people, 9 of whom are retiring. Now, I'll tell you the truth. When I was elected to the Senate in 15, I looked around that room, and I always was afraid of this day, just because of the age of the conference. It was a lot of folks that were they could retire, right? They could leave at any moment. And it's never a good spot to be in because you never know, they could all leave at the same time, God forbid. Obviously with 18, and the tough thing is this is a presidential year, which means turnout's higher, and you never know how that's going to affect different districts on the ground when it's an open seat. Historically, Republicans in the Senate, the rule of thumb was always you leave in a midterm election, not in a presidential year if you could help it. So we have a lot of open seats, and it puts some of these seats in play financially for us that maybe we otherwise would not have to spend money on. So I have been talking to the members who are leaving and try to express to them to hope to have their support, to help their successors get reelected. These are people who have dedicated 25, 30 years of their life to the New York State Senate and to our party and to our values. So nobody has a better understanding or a more vested interest than the people who are leaving to try to make sure that we can continue to fight going forward. So I think, obviously we got, like you said, we got to grow our party. One thing that I was talking about during the election process last week was when I was elected to the Senate, we had more women in our conference than the Democrats did. But nobody talked about that. Nobody would have known that. They get to champion that they're the conference for women, even though we had more female legislators for many years than they did. And I think that's, having more females, going out. I want to go out in the future and recruit. I'm going to find a Latino conservative, a Black conservative. I'm going to find, because I know they're out there, and we're going to run them. We're going to find them. We're going to run them because, the Democrats like to play this role that they sort of have a monopoly on all these different groups, and we're just the party of the white guy. And I don't like to play identity politics, but what I will say is sometimes people, we're right on the issues, Chairman. I know that, know that. I believe that. But sometimes you never get to the issues because people tune you out if maybe they don't connect with you in a different way, right? So if they don't think you look like them or think you have a similar backstory as they do, they may just tune you out, and you never get to the issues. You never get to talk about the issues. And I think we need people who can go into different parts of this state. As you mentioned, a big state, diverse state. We need different leaders to go into different parts to bring our message. And I think when we do that, that message is going to connect because we are right on the issues. Because I don't care if you live in the inner city of New York or Buffalo or in the suburbs, you want to know that if you call 911, someone's going to respond. Absolutely. You want to know that your business is going to be protected, that you can afford to be here. Those are issues that transcend ethnicity and gender and creed. Everyone wants that. Everyone wants to live in a safe and prosperous state. And we are moving, as you said, where we have serious thought leaders talking about abolishing police departments, which is just, I would have thought it was laughable 5 years ago.
We've come a long way in the wrong direction in a very short time. I mean, it was, the one thing that I've often said about Republican DNA once we get people in elected office is we always want to put an olive branch out to the other side and in basically apologize for being in control and offer up, compromises. The other side won't compromise on anything. And as soon as they had 100% control, you saw exactly what happened. They immediately went and attacked our elections and put all these quote unquote reforms on the table that weren't, they sound great. Same day voter registration, same day, or automatic voter registration is the other idea. So if you ever do a transaction, because if you pay your taxes, you'll automatically be registered to vote. And these all sound great. We just are living through this mail-in voting, nonsense right now, where we have ballots all over the place, tens of thousands that won't be counted for days. And it's all, if people really want to vote, that's a wonderful thing. Make it easier for them to vote. Early voting was the instant thing that came online, but they knew exactly what they were doing. These weren't done to, make it more democratic. These were done because Republicans were knocked on the ground, and it was a curb stomp, because there's a reason every Democrat leader in America is fighting for this mail-in voting. It's because they believe it's going to be their way to win elections all over the place. We saw ballot harvesting, which is the reason that I oppose this expansion in mail-in voting. I mean, it's one thing with a COVID crisis on a temporary fix because we may not be able to get polls open. But what you saw across the state is the polls were open, the elections ran fine. We had the most confusing election of all time in Western New York. It went off without a hitch. But you have these things because of expanded Democratic power, and they want to crush the Republican Party so there is no opposition. It's just, you'll have liberals and then radicals is what they want to have, is just two brands of Democratic thing. So as we go forward, as we try to get back to common sense, because I've thought for the whole time, this is not about trying to sell a right-wing ideology to the people of the state of New York. This is about restoring common sense to the taxpayers of the state so they can stay in their homes, so they can continue to call this a home, so that our families can stay united and not spread all over the geography of the state where you have to have Zoom meetings on Sunday during dinner so you get to know your grandkids. I mean, that's what I believe our mission to fight here is. One of the biggest impediments that you see to moving forward out of COVID is the extreme power of Andrew Cuomo, the unprecedented emergency powers he was granted by the Senate in one-party control, and our guys went along with it because it was a crisis. But I know you have been vocal in this. How do we get the powers reeled back in? How do we get back to a representative democracy? If we have a $13 billion budget deficit, isn't it incumbent on the state legislature to get their ass back to Albany and fix it?
It is incumbent. I mean, it's in the Constitution. The one thing that the legislature, and you and I both know, and hopefully people watching know, in New York State, before any of this stuff happened, the governor of New York, constitutionally, going back obviously decades, is one of the strongest governors in the union, in the country. Just for his powers as they emanate from the state constitution are very broad and have been. Under this crisis, he is obviously, that's like on steroids. And he has used, look at the governor is, I don't agree with him on very much, if anything these days, but I also don't, I'm not a fool. I know he knows what he's doing. He is not one to share power. And I don't see him I don't see the legislature is going to, in the order, the legislature has the power to say these emergency powers are done. We go back to, three branches of government. And particularly, as you mentioned, with the economic challenges, because it's coming, whatever the federal government may do, to me, there's no way that New York State just gets off the hook right there, because we know that there are structural challenges and there were problems before COVID hit. We were moving towards a financial difficulties with Medicaid and budget busters that we had just not addressed for many years. So now we're going to have to make some hard decisions. And again, the state Senate Democrats were elected to make hard decisions. You want one party control? Well, you got it, but you have to make the hard calls. And at this point, and I think they're content to let Andrew Cuomo make all the hard calls, make any cuts that have to be made, because certainly, that would be anathema to them. And who knows about tax increases. And I think they're content to just sit on their butts or maybe be behind a computer. Even we were in the Senate floor, Chairman, and it was so ridiculous. You had two people on the Senate floor, and they were upset that we were taking our mask down. Now, there was like 25 feet between me and the next senator. It's a huge chamber. You've been there. It's not a small room. And they that's their biggest concern is having your mask on and being behind your computer. And, but we're telling other people, we're telling first responders, nurses, doctors, you got to go out, grocery store clerks, you got to go out and work. Do as we say, not as we do. We're going to stay and hide and let the governor make all the hard decisions. Again, that is not leadership. And I cannot believe for the life of me, regardless of your party, that most New Yorkers can look at that and say, that's what I voted for. That's a good thing for me, my family, in the state.
We have, it seems like a total disconnect. You have the same people saying that you can't get together with 62 people in a chamber where you could fit 6,200 people. But we could have 100,000 walking through the streets in Brooklyn to protest, arm in arm, some masks, some no masks, but breaking every social distancing rule. You got teams of people working to tear down and vandalize statues around the city. Obviously, we had rioting, we had looting, we had everything. And you didn't hear the condemnations from, those on the left. You don't nationally hear the condemnations when they, there's thousands and thousands of people in the park across from the White House that are put there to, disrupt in the cities all over the country. So they're very disingenuous in their future. But if we don't take these dictatorial powers, yesterday, the governor he just changes things on a whim. Now we can't have the same businesses open in phase 4 that we thought we'd have in phase 4, gyms, theaters, things. You wait much longer, these people are going to be permanently out of business.
That's right.
And,
That's right.
Behavior changes through habit. I have habits now, and we all have habits now that we didn't have before the coronavirus, pandemic. Since we've been in our homes, functioning from home, a lot of people are reevaluating, do I need an office? Do I need to have as much of an office? There's a lot of things that are going to come out of this just by, the marketplace. And as if people have worked from home for 3 months, it's awful comfortable. But it's also not as productive for the economy. The time is now for the governor to let this power go and let local elected officials make decisions. We have, I think, 57,000 people took a coronavirus test in the state of New York this week, or just the other day, and 1.2% came back at the infection rate. We're ahead of this. The regional approaches work that he didn't want to do at the outset. He wanted to keep the whole state locked down. It was Republicans leading the charge on regionalization of this. Do you think there's anything that we can do from a legal perspective outside of the legislative process to strip these powers back?
I think there is. I'm not a lawyer, and usually that's received positively, and my friends who are lawyers will appreciate that. But you know, I do think there could be a challenge just on constitutional grounds that, you know, it's one thing if there's an actual, because the problem is, you know, define an emergency. I could ask 10 people and you might get 10 different definitions, right? So we have to be able to define, you know, I think we all understand that there would be a moment, there could be a moment when a governor, an executive, a president would have to make sort of an immediate decision, right? He would not have time to deliberate and put something through a committee, and I think we get that. Hence the term, you know, I had to make an executive decision, right? That's where that comes from, obviously. But we are not at that time anymore. These decisions have been deliberated, or should have been deliberated, for months. The idea that gyms and malls and YMCAs and Jewish community centers didn't know until yesterday. I mean, I'm sure they would not have been happy regardless, but it would have been nice probably if they had known maybe a couple of weeks ago, you're not going to be in phase 4. Or back when phase 2 hit, it'd have been nice if the night before, instead of him just saying, we're not going to phase 2, he could have just said, you know what, we screwed up. We didn't have the guidelines ready. Because that's what really happened there. He didn't have the guidelines. He talked about these international health experts he was going to bring in. The next morning, apparently, he talked to some guy from England, and we were in phase 2. I don't know what that guy from England knew that we didn't know here in New York. All the doctors and medical professionals that we have, but you know, so he's making this up as he goes. You mentioned that his show was canceled. Like a lot of shows that get canceled, I stopped tuning in a long time ago. You know, because quite frankly, they were proving less and less informative to me as a legislator. You know, it became more about, you know, his brother and you know, his family, and it was sort of a personality show at that point. But I think there is and should be some type of legal challenge. Right now, I mean, the state of New York, this is as close in my lifetime as I could envision to a dictatorial or quasi-dictatorial situation. And it could go on for another, I think the longest it can go on for is a year without the legislature acting. And that is ridiculous. But let's be honest, this is about political will and political courage. And the Democrats in the Senate and the Assembly simply don't have any.
It's a shame. 2 more quick topics, and then we're going to jump into questions. The nursing homes fiasco. Mm-hmm. Obviously, tragic loss of life. You know, people that were probably close to, you know, the end of their lives to begin with as nursing home patients. But they, because of a very devastating decision by the Cuomo administration, were exposed to COVID-19 and died a much more painful death than they would have probably from their other ailments or, you know, their age. Where do you see this going? You know, obviously there has to be some accountability. Yes. As a minority party, we may not be able to pass the bills that we want to pass or introduce legislation, but what can we do to cry out for accountability so that there is some justice for those families that lost loved ones to this COVID-19?
So up until recently, I was on the health committee and had called on the chair of the health committee to do an investigation into this, right? Because we should be providing oversight as well. I mean, it's one thing to have a governor with all these powers, but it's another thing for the legislature to abandon its oversight role. And you see this in Congress all the time, right? Whoever's in charge, they're providing vigorous oversight of the president or whoever. But in Albany, that I can tell you, historically, the legislature has not been great at oversight, regardless, in fairness, of who has controlled the levers. And that is something that I have always thought we should do far better at, is providing oversight of the executive. This was an executive order. And you talked about, you know, people at the end of their life, no question, they're, you know, maybe had underlying health conditions, but they also died a far more lonely death. Their families were not able to be there for that. And that's something that you just never get back. That's something that you never forget for the family. for the children, for the nieces, the nephews, the grandchildren. They will never be able to remember, oh, I looked at my grandfather and got to tell him I love him one last time. And that's something, and keep in mind, the governor issued this order back at the end of March. And one thing we knew from day one, Chairman, that never has changed throughout this whole thing, we knew the vulnerable at-risk population were elderly, underlying health conditions. Who's in a nursing home? Older folks with underlying health conditions. So the idea that somehow we could have missed that, right? The idea that order came out and there's been no accountability, no ownership. And it's not even just about pointing fingers. It's really just about identifying what did we do good? What did we do wrong? And make sure we don't do it again, because this pandemic could come back, something else could happen, and the people in New York State deserve to know what happened, why it happened, and how we're going to fix it. And at this point, there's been no oversight to make that happen. I'm hoping as well that the federal government, and I have heard from people like, Congressman Scalise and some others who are intent on looking into this issue from a national perspective, because it's not just New York. This happened in other states as well. But New York, I think, was one of the few where there was an executive order that basically said to nursing homes, you have to take COVID positive patients, which sounds insane to me, but that was an order that I know exists, and so does everyone else.
This governor's legacy will include, in if there's breath left in my lungs, and I know a lot of other people will fight for the same. This governor's legacy, as much as he wants to pound his chest and congratulate himself for a job well done, will include the fact that many people went to their demise because he insisted on bringing COVID patients into nursing homes, and it was like lighting a forest fire, while thousands of beds lay empty at the Javits Center, on the USS Comfort, and in many other Army Corps of Engineers beds that were created around the state. They weren't used, they weren't utilized, and people died because of this decision. And families deserve justice. You're never going to bring the loved one back, but accountability is leadership. Yep. And his governor needs to face that head on, because he's been far too self-congratulatory in this whole thing. I mean, for the fact we had the greatest loss of life, I believe truly there should be a 9/11 style commission put together for not just, obviously it's going to happen at the federal level. We know that, because it's divided government and the government's a zoo. But there needs to be that done here in New York, analyzing everything. Because if this governor had the real courage and wanted to stop the virus, he wouldn't have kept the subways open for 2 weeks after the infection started. And we could have gone in a much more serious lockdown and stopped the spread and probably saved 20,000 or more lives. So that's, I'll get off that soapbox for now. I see a question in the box talking about youth. How do we get more young people involved in our party, young people to run for office? You and I both, I believe, represent the youngest to hold our positions. And I think it was timely to bring on camera our state chair of the College Republicans, Bobby Walker, who's with us here today. He's everywhere in the state. He's out there getting young people on college campuses to volunteer and get involved in the party, and he always has a red hat on. So, Bobby, welcome.
Hi, thanks for having me on, Chairman, and Leader Ortt, thank you for your support of the College Republicans out there in Western New York. I know Geneseo College Republicans always have great things to say about you. So my question is just the same question that I posed to Leader Barclay on the last town hall. What are some things that like students and young people can do to get involved and help maybe some Senate campaigns, especially, we're getting to the end now, I think towards the end, hopefully, of some of the COVID stuff. And I know we've had some students back out in the field for candidates, but, what are some things, I guess, now that some students can think about doing in terms of getting involved with maybe some Senate campaigns or even in the government side of things as well, interns and internships and whatnot?
Sure. Well, there's a variety of things. Obviously, contacting You're free to contact my office. You can contact your, the local senators. We're depending on where the students live. That's all we, and I love to hear from young folks saying, I want to intern. I myself was once an intern for Congressman Jack Quinn, who I know our chairman would remember many years ago. And that's, quite honestly, that experience, no doubt, is a big part of why I'm where I am, or why I have pursued to be where I am, because of that experience. And so definitely, reach out to local local state senators. But I would also, talk about, look, we're going to need there'll be no shortage, or there will be a shortage, I'm guessing. No one is going to get turned away from volunteers. The chairman will tell you, we always need more volunteers, more bodies to go out and do things. And getting, I think, on your campuses, one of the challenges is always, and I remember when I was a college students generally don't want to get well, I don't want to get beat up, or I don't want to lose this date, or I don't want to I don't want to get involved in this stuff, right? And because we all know that it's very challenging to be a Republican on a number of college campuses. I mean, I've seen videos of students getting assaulted by other students. I know colleagues of mine that had to cancel speaking at a college in their district because of protests, and the school feared that there might, so when the left talks about freedom of thought, freedom of expression, the First Amendment, don't believe a word of it, because we've just seen too much evidence that is simply, they do not believe. They believe in it as long as you're saying what they're saying. And that's, by the way, that's not how it's supposed to work. If you were to, look at the founders and what they did. The other thing I would ask, or tell Bobby, and certainly anyone else, young people are great at using new ways to communicate, whether it's Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, whatever it might be, TikTok video. So you have skill sets that are actually in demand for campaigns, and don't be afraid to sort of push that and advertise that, because there's a lot of campaigns that I think as Republicans, we have to make sure we're constantly communicating. If we want to get younger, we need to be talking to young people where they are going and where they are, you're not going to go to a VFW hall and think you're going to recruit a bunch of young people that day, most likely, in my experience. So you got to go to Facebook, or you got to go to, Twitter, or you got to be out in these social media areas. And that's where you're going to reach different folks, different generations. And so I would say that all those areas are probably important for a youth movement within our party.
Very good. Our next person on the line, we've got Ray Walter joining us, former state assembly member. Welcome, Ray.
Thank you, Chairman. How are you today?
We're terrific.
And Leader Ortt, congratulations.
Thank you, Ray. Nice to see you.
Good to see you. Just a question. I've been talking to some folks and being a parent myself, and there's a big concern about schools and reopening schools. And I know you have a lot of experience with the disability community, with those kids not being in schools, they're not getting the resources that they need. So what are the prospects of schools opening up in the fall, and what can we do to move the governor and try to get him on board with making sure these schools are open up? Because I'm hearing from administrators and teachers that there's no guidance coming from the state at this point regarding opening up schools in the fall.
That's a great question, Ray. And as you can imagine, I hear that one sort of more and more just from regular parents in my district, because it's a real concern. And I'm not surprised there's a lack of guidance based on just what we've seen in other phases of this. There's obviously a governing component of this. So my staff and I are on regular calls with folks from the governor's office. And certainly this is going to be an area that we have and will continue to raise with them, because I think aside from the political side of this, there's just I don't care what your party is, this is a concern if you're a parent. Where's my kid going to be in September, right? Where's my child? Are they going to be learning? But I think the bigger issue is economically, you cannot have the economy open if schools aren't open. I mean, there's just no way, we're forgetting that we're in the summer, right? Schools were canceled. Now we're in the summertime. a lot of parents sort of have this figured out anyways, because in the summertime, they know their children aren't going to be in school. But you get to September, I guarantee most parents don't have a plan for where's my, and again, I know some people might be able to work from home, but there's still a lot of jobs that are going to require parents to be at their job. But also, even if you're working from home, I'm hearing from parents that are saying, look, if I'm working from home, I need to be working from home. I can't be educating or watching my child. So I don't know that you can realistically talk about the economy being back open if schools are closed. I do think schools will look a little different. I don't know that it's going to look the same, but somehow those schools are going to have to be open. And that's going to certainly be my message, and certainly my advocacy, is that we have to find a way, working with our superintendents, to have them open.
No, I agree with you, Senator. It's a necessity. I mean, I've just seen how it's affected my family. I mean, as myself and my wife have both worked here from home, and having a 6-year-old running around, my wife obviously has handled the homeschooling, the lion's share of it at least, and to try to that and balance her work and everything that needed to happen. I mean, it's put incredible pressure, but also the lack of social interaction, for our daughter, who's an only child, has been detrimental, and it's caused it certainly caused some problems that we've had to find creative ways to solve as we've had the separation. So this is something that's on a lot of people's minds, and we have to be strong advocates for in-person education, not this remote nonsense that the governor wants to look at. Is brick and mortar education gone? Is we're going to bring Bill Gates in to screw around with our schools? We don't have time for bored billionaires to screw with our kids' future. And, we need to stand loud, proud, and tall. And maybe we'll even find common ground with the teachers union for the first time in a while.
Holy cow, that would be welcome, I suppose. But you're right. We already tried the Bill Gates one time with the Common Core and the APPR, and that did not work out very well. I don't think most New Yorkers, parents or teachers, want to go back down that road.
Right. We have with us retired Judge Frank Shalais. How are you?
I'm doing very well, Chairman. Congratulations on the victories that you helped support and the party supported on Tuesday.
Thank you.
And thank you again for these town hall meetings. I think I've attended every one of them other than one, and I think it's a great way, and thank you for your putting this out there for members of our party to interact with our leaders. Leader Ortt, congratulations on your ascension to the leadership of the Senate, Republican minority. I'm from downstate New York. I'm from Long Island, and I too share with the chairman I never thought I'd see a day where police are being treated like garbage. And down in Long Island, I live in Nassau County. I served in the Nassau County court system as a judge and in many other capacities. But they're now, the big attack now that's happening downstate in Long Island is police unions are being attacked. We also have a problem of a media called Newsday that wrote an editorial the other day condemning police unions. There are even now these anarchists, these criminals are trying to start up in the suburbs, and I hear that they're even starting to move into neighborhoods and protesting, which is a very dangerous situation. But my question to you, Leader, is I know you're newly on board, and I know that you are going to be controlling through one of your senators the Republican Senatorial Campaign Committee. What is your direction with that committee? That's question number one. Question number two, is there one particular race that you think that we can, that's the most vulnerable, where we could take out a sitting Democrat?
All right. Well, as far as you're right. The SRCC, the Senate Republican Campaign Committee, falls under my direction. The current chair, or the recent chair, Senator Akshar, has stepped down from that position. That was his decision. We're going to replace. We're going to put someone in there who is eager to look at. It's a thankless task, right? Now, the truth is, really, it's going to be me, acting as the SRCC chair for all intents and purposes, because donors and voter, they don't want to hear, they want to hear from me. They want to hear from the leader, whoever that person is. In this case, it's myself, and I'm happy to go do that. But I do need someone to kind of mind the store, make sure the staff and everyone is pulling in the same direction. And actually, we have some very good senators, I think, that could do that. It's going to be there's going to be a lot more structure. There's going to be a real aggressiveness. We need some energy. We need some life. I just really recently met with the SRCC staff, and I will tell you, they seem pretty beaten down, and they're a little demoralized right now. But if they're watching, or anyone else out there, that's going to change. We're going to have some fun, because there's nothing more fun than going and taking the fight to somebody else, as opposed to just having it delivered to you. And that's where there's going to be a shift. And I'm happy to sort of be the tip of the spear on that, where I have to be. But we have a lot of good senators who are leaders in our conference, who feel the same way I do, who can go out there and also raise money, right? It's a team effort. So that's going to be we're going to make some changes at the staff level, bring in a new chair who shares my vision. And that's going to happen shortly. I'm going to have a private conversation with people like the chairman, because I want to get some of their thoughts. He's known a lot of my colleagues, who got to meet them, and he knows what it is to go around and try to raise money and do those things. So I do want to hear what he has to say as well. I won't subject the entire group to that conversation, but as far as a targeted race on the Democratic side, because I'm an elected official, I can't answer and just say there's one. There's probably a couple. I think about Senator Jen Metzger. She's the chair of the Agriculture Committee, and she passed and supported a bill that is going to crush our family farms in the state of New York, and is going to result in family farms going away in the state of New York. So that is a vulnerable seat. I think there are senators on Long Island, Senator Gorin, Senator Thomas, who have supported all of the worst measures of their New York City counterparts. So rather than being a defenders of Long Island, they have been anything but. They have been absolute, ancillaries, stooges to the New York City control of that conference. And we're going to make sure that the people on Long Island who pay exceedingly high taxes, who have in many cases gone away from New York City to get away from all the things that are synonymous with that place. Basically, their representatives are no more than bootlickers to the people who run that conference from New York City. And we're going to make sure people know that. So I would say those three are probably the most vulnerable that we're going to be going after on their side.
I'm also very excited today to see the video announcing the candidacy of Rob Astorino to run for the state Senate. I mean, Pete Harcum is, you use the term bootlicker. I like that a lot. He's certainly someone that just follows his leadership off a cliff. Rob obviously being, to have someone of his caliber come and run for the state Senate, someone that's been a county executive, run for governor, understands how, Albany works in the worst ways. To have him coming into the ranks of the Senate, I know he'll be well funded. He is going to take the fight directly to him, and we're going to be promoting his announcement today. But that's another.
Thank you for that, Chairman. I didn't forget about him. I just already had him in the Senate, so that's why I moved on away from him. But there
are so many great candidates running. I mean, we have an embarrassment of riches, and we will use this forum to bring more and more of them so that people all over the state can see this. I think, before we get to our last, guest, I think that we have the opportunity. We used to say all politics is local. You run it just strictly on local issues. I think we have a way to make this a statewide campaign. Mm-hmm. I see our friends on Long Island are already saying, replace the Long Island 6. Well, because we used to have 9 senators from Long Island that were a strong bloc in the Republican conference, and there's now 6 that absolutely are voting against the best interests of Long Island every single time they cast a vote. But the same common values that we're fighting for, more affordability, better freedom, and obviously safety and security. These are things that everybody can buy into, no matter what party you're in. If you're not part of the radical left, you get it. You know, you want to protect your family, protect your property, protect your home, and protect your future. And that's been on the line, and it has been sacrificed greatly by the Senate majority. We have our last person that'll get the last question for our leader is Julie Powers-Killian. Welcome.
Thanks, Chairman Langworthy. These Thursday sessions have been terrific, and thank you so much to Rob for serving our country and also serving our state. I was just thrilled when I woke up that morning and read that you had become our leader. So thank you.
Thank you, Julie. Great to hear from you.
I'm here in not sunny Marxist California, where I've been arguing with liberals who white elite liberals who tell me that the violence is actually needed. But anyway, that being said, one of the disconnects I've seen for us as Republicans is getting our message out to your average Republican, and the Democrats always benefit with whatever they do, and then they get the media. We don't have the media. So, and when I say getting out to your average Republican, I mean the people that are Republicans that care, but they don't have the time. They're not the people. They're not part of committees. They're not going to listening to this. So that we're hoping to get more on. And I've been getting calls from a lot of people that are really distressed because there's a lot of rhetoric in New York. You know, the media loves to talk about the party that wasn't the Republicans, and we know that there's a lot of good things going on. So how do you have ideas about getting that message, getting messages about our party and about our platform out to people, and how do we reach that average person in new ways that we really, I don't think, have been able to before?
Yeah, it's a great question, and certainly anyone in elected office fights this battle every day, because we know that the media is certainly never our friend, and sometimes they're actually the allies a lot of times of the other side. And so even the narratives, even their questions, are driven by these false narratives that are pushed by Democrats and by the progressives. I think something you mentioned, Julie, that's important is, every Democrat that I see running for office, you see what they did before. They were an activist. They're all activists now. That is their job. I used to not think that was a job. I didn't think you could be an activist and pay your rent and stuff. But apparently, that's all these folks do. So to your point, they're all engaged, right? The far left, they're all engaged, whether they're going to protest, whether they're disrupting, some kind of conservative person on a campus, whether they're going out and, intimidating people to vote for their candidates on social media or in real life. Republicans, many of our folks, they have real jobs, right? They're business owners, they're farmers, they're, police officers, they're single mothers who are working to, pay. I mean, those are our folks. And so it's, they're, to your point, they're not dialed in on Twitter and constantly following every little thing that goes on. So I think, there's no easy answer. I wish I could say, oh, we just do this and then we're there. I do think social media presents an alternative to the traditional media, which is why they want to shut it down sometimes, because they know that that's an avenue for us to bypass, ABC and CBS and NBC and all those, MSNBC. But I also think when people like me and our chairman and other elected officials, and I'm going to tell our candidates, don't play the media's game. Do the interview, but let them know, look, this could be combative if you want it to be combative, but I'm going to get my message out. I'm not going to let you take me for a walk here. I know what you're doing. And this, yesterday I had David Lombardo, who I dealt with and had nothing against, but he was parroting, that, well, they just want to raise taxes on millionaires and billionaires. No, they don't. That's certainly, they want to do that, but they also talk about, the Climate Community Protection Act, increasing taxes on gasoline for everyone, 17 cents a gallon. I mean, do the math, folks, on when you're filling up. So that's a tax that would be paid by every New Yorker, middle class, lower middle class, if you drive a car, because they don't like cars. When they talk about, adding regulations, when they talk about single payer health care, who's paying for that? You don't have enough millionaires and billionaires to pay for that. You and I are going to pay for that. We're all going to pay for that. And what's going to happen is more people are going to leave that are mobile. And the people who, a lot of people I represent who are not mobile, they're here, they're stuck here. They don't have the financial means to move to Florida or to move to Arizona or Texas or wherever. They're the ones who are going to get stuck paying these bills that are impossible to pay. So that's where you got to push back on the narrative that sometimes is put out there by the press. And I think the more candidates we do that, the more regular Republicans are going to say, you know what, that person's right. I better get out and vote for that person. They're going to recognize the difference.
Well, we must get people to recognize the difference between the two parties. And I know that you believe, like I do, that we need clear contrast. We need to use our megaphone to be heard as loud and clearly as we can. We're not going to match them with money. We're not going to, we don't have the loads of people from the Union Hall, to take in there. We're reliant, just like our forefathers that founded this country, on people patriotically getting involved, financially supporting, getting involved in their community, telling their friends and neighbors. I mean, because like you said, many people that are of our ideology, they're very busy with their own lives. They run businesses. They, have very busy jobs. They're worried about their family's future. They're not out on the street waving signs and protesting. And that is something that we have to get more organized. So I thank you very much for being here, stepping up and taking this mantle of leadership and responsibility. And I look very much forward to a great partnership working forward in election night, announcing a whole lot of Senate Republican wins where we can once again restore potentially a majority, if not an awful lot stronger group of people to keep this party in business through redistricting and beyond. But you're going to do a great job. Rob Ortt, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for being here.
Thank you very much, Chairman, for that.
Thank you. And if you enjoyed what you hear today, we're going to keep it going. I mean, even after COVID's over, this has been very successful. It's a great way for us to talk to people all over New York State. As you saw some of the callers, there's people from Long Island, Westchester, Western New York, upstate, downstate. There's people here united because we are one united and strong statewide Republican Party. We must be united if we're going to succeed. And the only way to change New York is to change governors of this state of New York. And that is our ultimate mission in 2022. So if you like what you hear, if you can help, if you can afford to help, please, take the time to go to nygop.org, make a donation today. We need your help. Without the in-person events, without, having a gala, we have not had the opportunity to raise funds as the party has in the past. A lot of, all of our campaigns have been uprooted by this. And we need you to get involved more than ever because clearly they're using the governor's extreme power to try to give them the advantage at the ballot box this year. We need you. So thank you very much. We'll be back at it next week at noon on Thursday. Have a great weekend and we'll talk to you soon.